In 1970, the Chen family, living on the Vuong farm, on the outskirts of Kingsville, Ohio, in the Midwestern Rust Belt, welcomed their long-awaited baby boy. Watching the joy on her parents' faces, Ella Chen couldn't help but roll her eyes, only to be discreetly nudged by her older sister, Lily Chen, prompting her to rein it in. Chapter 1, Labor. Ella, are you done with the fodder? Mrs. Young. Ella, struggling under the weight of a willow basket nearly as tall as she was, filled with pigweed, wobbled down the hillside and greeted her neighbor, Mrs. Young, who was coming the other way. Mrs. Young, heading out early to dig for wild greens on the hill, was shocked to see the skinny little girl bent almost double under the massive load. The child's clothes were drab gray, patched all over, and too short for her wrists and ankles. Her face was pale, tinged with a sickly hue, cheekbones protruding. Mrs. Young shook her head. The Chen family really didn't treat their children like people. Seeing the dew still clinging to the grass blades along the path, Mrs. Young had thought herself an early riser, but this child was out even earlier. No doubt it was old Mrs. Chen's doing. Still, while old Mrs. Chen was harsh, Ella's father, old Chen, and her mother, Anna, weren't blameless. If they had stood their ground, the old woman wouldn't have been able to mistreat the child so. Thinking of the Chen's ways, Mrs. Young inwardly curled her lip, but kept a smile on her face. Ella, shouldn't you hurry home? I thought I heard someone calling from your place just now. Your mother's probably in labor. Really? Ella was startled, but then remembered her mother Anna's enormous belly and the due date. It made sense. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Young. I'm heading down now. Go on, go on. Be careful on the way down, Mrs. Young couldn't help but caution, watching the unsteady little figure. Thanks, Mrs. Young. With that, Ella, still burdened by the huge basket, parted ways with Mrs. Young and hurried towards home at the foot of the hill. Her short legs, which usually moved slowly, picked up speed. Reaching the base, she looked up at the rising sun, its ruddy glow warming. Ella sighed. She hoped her mother would get her wish this time. The tiny girl trudged along the mountain path with her basket. Fortunately, the Chen house wasn't far from the hill. Looking at the scattered houses ahead, the second from the end was the Chen's. Farther off towards the town center, the houses were more orderly. The Chens lived in a somewhat remote spot, but the town was small. A few streets over was the central square. Passing a large clearing at the hill's base where many children were digging for wild greens in groups, Ella glanced but didn't stop, striding purposefully forward. As soon as she entered the yard, she heard the clamor of shouts from the room next to the main house. It was happening. Ella didn't go inside. Instead, she went to the pig pen in the backyard first, set down the basket, dumped the fresh pigweed into the trough, and called, Sue-ee. Sue-ee, to coax the sow lying in the corner to come eat. Watching the sow grunt and munch away, Ella then scooped several ladles of water from the barrel beside the pen into the water trough before finally heading to the kitchen. The kitchen was next to the main house, a crude wooden shack that couldn't compare to the other building's brick or stone structures, but it kept out the wind and rain. Pushing aside the rough cloth curtain at the kitchen entrance, sure enough, her sister Lily was squatting by the hearth, feeding the fire. A large pot of water simmered on the stove. Sis. Hearing the curtain rustle, Lily, who was adding kindling, looked up. Seeing her sister enter, a faint smile touched her face. Ella, come warm up by the fire. The early autumn morning wasn't exactly cold, but it was chilly. Looking at Ella's thin, short clothes and slightly blue-tinged face, Lily's heart ached, but she felt helpless. In this family, children had little say, sometimes barely able to look after themselves. But Lily dearly loved her younger sister, whom she had practically raised single-handedly. From the time Ella was born, aside from being nursed by their mother for the first 6 months, everything else had fallen to Lily, only 2 years older. So, still a child herself, Lily had stumbled along, raising her sister to age 6. She'd thought their mother Anna wouldn't have more children, but last fall, she'd gotten pregnant again. And now, right at the start of fall, she was going into labor. Chapter 2, Delivery. The two sisters squatted by the hearth, warming themselves, listening intermittently to the cries of pain from the next room, growing sharper and more agonized, punctuated by old Mrs. Chen's angry shouts. Ella listened fearfully, trembling slightly, and leaned closer to Lily. "Sis, do you think Mom will have a brother this time?" Ella asked, scared, trying to distract herself. "Probably." Lily was fairly sure, having heard their mother talk about it for 10 months. But she was still a little worried. Until the baby was born, anything was possible. Thinking this, her voice grew firmer. "It'll be a brother." Ella had nothing to say to Lily's certainty. Her own ears had been worn out by their mother's 10-month mantra, "It's definitely a boy." In the room adjoining the main bedroom, Ella Chen lay on the bed, howling in pain, legs splayed. Her swollen belly tightened in waves, pain cresting again and again. She gripped the bed sheet beneath her. It had been 3 or 4 hours since dawn, and the baby still hadn't come. Anna was exhausted, drenched in sweat, her hair plastered wetly to her cheeks. Weary, Anna turned her head to look at her mother-in-law, who was assisting the birth. Her voice was hoarse. "Ma, not yet?" "Nope," old Mrs. Chen snapped, then checked under the sheet, gesturing with her hand. 8 centimeters. "Stop wailing. It's not like you haven't done this before." "Ma, it hurts. I'm worn out." Anna licked her lips, offering a placating smile to old Mrs. Chen. "How about fixing me some sugar water with an egg?" Old Mrs. Chen, who'd been summoned by Anna at first light and had watched her daughter-in-law scream and writhe for hours without progress, now heard this request. She rolled her eyes in exasperation. "In your dreams. What sugar water? Just push harder now, might pop right out." Anna, having dealt with her mother-in-law for years, knew exactly what this meant. Wait until the baby was born. Another contraction hit. Anna felt a vein throbbing at her temple. She gripped the sheet again, lifted her upper body slightly, and bore down with all her might. Suddenly, the world went dark for a second as something slid out of her. She fell back onto the bed, gasping. She knew she delivered. "Ma, what is it?" Anna's voice was weak and raspy post-birth, but the hope in it was unmistakable. Looking at the tiny thing, old Mrs. Chen quickly grabbed the shears and cut the cord. Peering at the anatomy below, the old woman's face split into a grin. She lifted the baby, gave its bottom a slap, and it let out a hearty wah. Wah, cry. Old Mrs. Chen crowed with delight, "It's a boy." She grabbed the small blanket prepared earlier by the bed, swaddled the infant, and laid it beside Anna's pillow. "You rest here. I'm going to check the kitchen." The wah-wah cries reached the kitchen. Ella and Lily both let out a sigh of relief, their anxious hearts finally settling. Anna's agonized screams had been truly frightening. Old Mrs. Chen pushed aside the curtain and saw the 2 girls squatting together. She raised an eyebrow. Seeing the old woman's expression, Ella quickly spoke up. "Grandma, I just finished feeding the pigs and came in. Did Mom have the baby? Is it a brother?" "Had it. A boy." Hearing Ella mention finishing the pig feeding, old Mrs. Chen's expression softened a fraction. Thinking of the grandson inside, it brightened further. "Lily, go to the cupboard, get 2 eggs, a spoonful of brown sugar. Make your mother some sugar egg water. Ella, go tell your father in the fields." She waved a hand immediately after. "Forget it, don't fetch him. Just let him know. Better he doesn't come back, or he'll lose a morning's wages." Chapter 3, Rebirth and the Gift. Following old Mrs. Chen's instructions, Lily took the key the old woman handed her, went to the cupboard against the west wall, unlocked it, retrieved 2 eggs from the egg basket on the first shelf, and carefully scooped a spoonful of brown sugar from the sugar jar. She placed the eggs on the cutting board, fetched a ceramic bowl from the cabinet beneath, and poured the sugar in. After finishing, she relocked the cupboard and handed the key back to old Mrs. Chen. Looking at the eggs on the board, Ella swallowed hard, just as old Mrs. Chen noticed. "Little brat, what are you gawking at? Get going." The old woman made as if to swat her. Seeing trouble, Ella ducked past her and shot out the door, old Mrs. Chen scolding following her. Ella sighed. Most folks in town lived on the west side near the hills, the fields were mostly east. Ella headed towards the fields, walking and musing. In her past life, she hadn't been wealthy, but she'd been comfortably middle class, never wanting for food. Then, in a blink, she was back in 1970s America, in a poor farm family short on everything. Thinking of her past self, Ella sighed. In the 21st century, she'd also been the second child, with an older sister and a younger brother, just like now. Back then, while her parents might not have doted on her, at least they didn't hit or scold her, and she never lacked food or clothes, much better than this life. After all, people cared about appearances. No one wanted to be accused of favoring sons over daughters. She'd gone smoothly from elementary school to university, then worked at a private company, busy every day, until she died from a heart attack brought on by overwork. She'd thought she was dead. Then she woke up bawling, wah, wah, and thought maybe fate had been kind, giving her a second chance. But from the family's conversations, she learned it was 1964. A baby who couldn't talk, who could only cry, wah, wah, all day, rather fussy, which annoyed Anna, who was already disdained by her mother-in-law for having a girl. During the postpartum month, Anna hardly held her except to nurse. After the month, she was dumped on the bed for Lily to care for. At 6 months, she was weaned and fully handed over to Lily. As for her nominal father, Old Chen, he never said a word from start to finish. No one in the family objected. Situations like this were common on farms, everyone managed somehow. And besides, it was just a girl. Fortunately, fate had thrown her a bone. At 1 year old, she'd been hit, knocked her head, passed out, and scraped her arm. When she woke up, there was a scar on her left forearm. It was faint, just a slightly darker patch of skin you wouldn't notice unless you looked closely. She'd been upset for a while then. But one night, while absent-mindedly tracing the scar, she saw a space, like a storage room, about 4 square meters. The next day, she had Lily feel the scar, but her sister felt nothing. Remembering novels she'd read, Ella couldn't help but chuckle. Rebirth did come with a bonus package, even if it was late. But staring at the empty space, her stomach growling, Ella cursed fate. At least she had a private space to hide things. Back then, small and led by Lily, she'd sneak things like cucumbers or tomatoes from the garden into it when no one was looking. She discovered the space was stasis, things went in as they were and came out unchanged. Relieved, she started hoarding food like a hamster. Luckily, she only took misshapen or imperfect produce, not noticeable, so no one caught on. She kept this secret even from Lily, as close as they were. Later, when she was older and could go up the hill with Lily, she'd stash wild berries, nuts, whatever she found. At 3 or 4, she started helping Lily cut fodder and do farm chores. She'd sneak sweet potatoes, whatever she could, into the space. That's how she and Lily secretly filled their bellies when hungry. Otherwise, with the meager portions old Mrs. Chen doled out, they'd probably have starved. Lily never knew. Whenever Ella produced something, she thought her little sister had just pilfered it. Though uneasy, her growling stomach accepted it, making her love and protect her sister even more, deepening their bond. Besides the space, fate had been extra generous, bestowing great strength. As she grew, so did her power. Now, at 6, Ella had the strength of a 12-year-old. But she was cunning enough never to show it openly, holding back even when working. If old Mrs. Chen found out, she'd probably work her like an ox. The thought made Ella shudder. Knowing the old woman all these years, it was a definite possibility. Chapter 4, News in the Fields. Thinking of the struggles over the years, at least she was tough, had survived, healthy so far. Walking along, she picked up a stone from the ground and crushed it effortlessly in her palm. Ella's eyes gleamed. Maybe fate was on her side after all. After walking about half a mile, she finally reached the field's edge. Most people from town who weren't elderly, ill, or disabled were working here. From afar, Ella saw her father in this life, Old Chen, bent over weeding, the swing of his hoe marking him as a capable hand. Beside him, an old man, old Mr. Chen, in a straw hat, worked similarly, though he straightened up now and then to wipe his brow with his sleeve. "Dad! Grandpa," she called from a distance. Hearing her, both Chen men and the other workers looked over. Seeing it was Ella, a neighbor working near, old Chen nudged him. "Your second girl's here." "What is it?" Old Chen, puzzled, walked over to meet her. Old Mr. Chen, also curious, followed to the field's edge. "Dad, Mom had the baby." Seeing old Chen's confusion, Ella stifled an eye roll, thinking, couldn't you hear Anna this morning? But she didn't dare say it. "Mom had a brother. Grandma told me to let you and Grandpa know, but to wait till noon to come back." "Really?" Old Chen's face lit up with joy. He finally had a son, wouldn't be the subject of whispers anymore. He had to confirm. "A boy?" "It's a brother," Ella affirmed, nodding. Watching old Chen's grin widen, old Mr. Chen also looked pleased. But thinking of his wife saying to come back at noon, he knew it was about not losing wages. He nodded without a word and went back to work. "All right, I know. You hurry back and help look after your brother and your mother," old Chen said, beaming, before turning back to the field. The folks nearby who'd been eavesdropping caught the gist. When old Chen returned, they all offered congratulations. "Congrats, old Chen. Finally got a son." "Congratulations. Old Chen, you must be over the moon. Gotta say, sons are better. They'll be a strong pair of hands later." "Yeah, girls aren't as strong, can't do as much. Sons carry on the family name, right? Old Chen." The chatter rose, the field buzzing for a moment. Seeing the group slacking off, the foreman let it slide since it was almost lunch break anyway. After old Chen's instruction, Ella trudged slowly back home. Having eaten nothing since morning, her stomach growled. Thinking of the walnuts and wild berries in her space, she sighed and kept walking. Entering the yard, she saw her uncle, young Chen, squatting on the main house's doorstep, slurping something noisily. The faint scent of eggs and the cloying sweetness of sugar water wafted over, making Ella's stomach rumble even louder. Young Chen glanced up at Ella's return, then bent his head to slurp a few more mouthfuls, using his chopsticks to shovel a poached egg into his mouth with gusto, showing no intention of sharing with Ella. Ella didn't approach either. In her experience, this uncle never shared. The youngest son, doted on by old Mrs. Chen since childhood, he got the best food in the house. Already 20 this year, he'd never done a proper day's work in the fields. He wasn't exactly plump, but compared to most folks' sallow complexions, his was ruddy and healthy. Old Mrs. Chen ruled the household with an iron will. Though Anna had complained over the years, she was always suppressed. Plus, young Chen had a silver tongue, the best at sweet-talking, coaxing old Mrs. Chen and old Mr. Chen into letting him stay idle. So he'd grown up shiftless and spoiled.